What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see from the title, and I'm assuming you clicked on the video because you want to talk about the Joker 2, and that's exactly what we're doing in today's video. Full warning, I'm going to tell you right now, full spoilers ahead. So I'm going to be spoiling. There's going to be spoilers in the comments. We're talking everything about this film. I'm going to kind of navigate my thoughts. I have some things written here, but it's going to really just be like an open conversation. We're talking about the beginning, the middle, and especially the end and how I interpreted certain things and what I liked and what I disliked about the film. So before we get into this discussion, I'm really excited to be here with you all. Again, thank you for clicking on the video. Please do me a favor and consider hitting that like button. But more importantly, I'm doing this to interact with you all. So hit the share button, but also share your thoughts of the film in the comments below. Let me know what you liked, loved, or hated about this film, your deeper meanings, your big takeaways, your interpretations of certain elements of this film, and we gotta talk about the ending in the comment section. So first and foremost, again, before we dive into the spoilers, if you haven't seen the film yet and you just like happen to click on this video, or you were watching another video and this video just automatically played, well, if you don't want to hear spoilers, I do have a spoiler-free review on the channel now that you all can check out, which gives you just my general impressions, my pros and cons. But again, this video is targeted towards an actual discussion and dive into this film. So again, check that video out if you haven't seen the film yet and you want to know if it's good or it's bad and it's worth checking out. But again, if you are here now at this point, we're talking spoilers, and just kick things off. The way Batman came in, and then Bane was here, and then you saw Ra's al Ghul. They were fighting the Joker, and Harley Quinn had a bomb and everything. Nah, that obviously didn't happen. I would have preferred that to happen than what we got here. But anyway, let's break this down. Again, this is just, if you've seen one of these videos before from me, this is meant to be somewhat structured, but it's also meant, and this is just how I just think of my channel, and this is just me going on a tangent already. I look at my channel as like you're talking to a friend, having a good time, right? It could be analytical, it can be a little all over the place, but it's at the end of the day, it's just here to have fun and have an open discussion, positive or negative, but respectful discussion, and let's do that. So, where to begin? First and foremost, I've said in my non-spoiler review, and I've said it on the channel before, I'm a fan. Fan might not be the word, because I feel like when you're a fan of something, you can revisit it, you can watch it, and all that stuff. I don't revisit the first Joker a lot. Like, I've seen it probably 3 times. And the reason I don't revisit a lot is because it's a pretty tough film to watch. But putting that aside, I think it's a well-done movie, a great movie. It's one of my favorite films of 2019. So, leading up into the Joker 2, hearing that they were making it, even though Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix, a lot of the creators saying, we ain't doing no sequel no matter how much money Warner Brothers give us. It's a one and done. But yeah, when you back up that truck of money and, you hear the cha-ching and you can pay off your mortgage, you got babies that you didn't have 5 years ago, things change. So nonetheless, as the film is leading up, hearing that Lady Gaga is going to be in the cast, she's playing Harley Quinn, who I'm a fan of that character, and I'm also a fan of Lady Gaga as an actress, whether it be her on the screen, A Star Is Born, which I think was her first like big breakout as far as a movie star goes or a movie actress goes. I've seen her in all the episodes she was in American Horror Story when I was once a fan of those series of shows. And then, seeing her in House of Gucci, and it's something else she was in and that's not coming to mind, but I think she's a good actress. So I was excited to be like, okay, I like Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie did her thing in the live action, but let's see if someone else's interpretation. So I was excited about that. And then things came out about it was going to be a musical. Now, let me just say this now. I'm a fan of musicals. I talked about it in my spoiler-free review. Some of the more recent musicals that I love, I mentioned A Star Is Born, which I think you can categorize as a musical. I mentioned West Side Story, In the Heights. Also, I'm a huge fan of La La Land. I love Sing Street. So I love a good musical. So I'm like, I like musicals, but in the Joker world, Arthur Fleck, Todd Phillips, what the hell is going on over there? So I wouldn't say I was nervous going into this movie, but I would say I was intrigued. And of course, if you know, the film played, it was at Cannes or TIFF. It was at one of the film festivals. Pretty mixed reviews, but that didn't really bother me because the first one had mixed reviews. And like I said, I enjoyed that film. Enjoy it. I think that film's great. I wouldn't say I enjoy it because it's a tough film, tough pill to swallow. But nonetheless, here we are talking about this second one, Folie, which we'll talk about it later. I still think that subtitle, now after seeing the film, doesn't make sense. And I believe the definition of that is a shared delusion. I don't know where that plays into this film, and we'll get into that here. But let's talk about it. Opening up this movie, we have the opening sequence, and it's in the form of a Looney Tunes animation. So initially, I'm saying to myself, "Oh shit, we are in for a ride." Like, what are we into? It is literally loony right now. But no, let's get into this. The opening sequence, the Looney Tunes sequence, to me is pretty much the meat and bones and potato of what this film is going for. Right? To me, that opening scene essentially conveys what Arthur's going through. And the central plot of him having this conflict within this Looney Tunes approach, and it's conveying the idea that the shadow of the Joker is growing too large for Arthur to handle. And as we see in the animation, which by the way, the animation was cool to look at. Like, I like Looney Tunes, right? It was cool to look at. You see the shadow consuming him, taking his form, right? And we'll talk about the split personality that this film kind of brings up. And it eventually consumes him and he gets arrested and all this stuff. But initially, like I said, I'm like, what is going on? At first, I'm like, it's like, is this a Pixar, a short film before the film? But it was an interesting way to kind of open the film and set you in the mind that this is in the mind of Arthur Fleck, which can have its complexities. It can have its musical numbers, its Looney Tune moments, its sad moments, happy moments, and all the different things that Arthur goes through. So an interesting way to open a film that I thought was confused on what it wanted to be. I thought this film almost took on the personality of Arthur Fleck too much, because as Arthur Fleck, he doesn't know who he is. And I don't think this film knows what it is. And we'll get into that in this discussion. But let me know, initial question off the bat for you all in the comments. What did you think about the opening? Were you thrown off? Were you entertained? Were you excited to what you were getting into? Let me know your thoughts on that opening sequence. Again, from that opening sequence, it just kind of conveying my thoughts on the narrative of this film. And again, I think that this sequel is mostly trying to tackle the shadow of the Joker, and it's consuming Arthur, and it's too big for him to handle. And I said this in my non-spoiler review, there's an idea here. You know, there's an idea to really dive into the minutia of this character who I'm a lifelong, Joker, Batman, DC is my jam, but I've accepted that this isn't the Joker that I've come to. One of the greatest villains ever written in any medium. But anyway, I've put aside, my thoughts of the Joker and just have, just like a comic book or an illustrator, they have their stab at it. They have their interpretation of it. So I've put that aside, and I went on this journey with this character. But I just think, as we'll talk about, it's just a poorly written, confused, unattainable, like they had something there, but just couldn't control it. There was just too much going on for them. But anyway, I'm not going to go beat for beat, scene for scene, but I want to talk about the first half. I thought the first half of this movie was the worst part of this film, because what it sets up, it doesn't ultimately deliver by the end of the movie, but it also, I felt like the first 45 minutes or so was rough to watch. And when I say rough to watch, I'm not referring to like, oh, this is just so tough, this is so depressing. I mean, it could be for others, but it wasn't for me per se. I was there, I saw the first one, I'm here to see the second one, so I knew what I was getting into. When I say it was tough to watch, I'm more referring to the packaging of the first act and how it was handled. And I felt like Todd Phillips made this movie in response to the response of the first film, which we know was critically successful. Like, I am still baffled by how the first movie made $1 billion. Like, it is a mystery of the century to me. But putting my surprise of the first one aside, I think Todd Phillips really is aiming at making this film being a response to the first one and really look at the audience and playing into and it doesn't take a rocket science to figure this out. It's almost like the justification or the glorification of someone like an Arthur Fleck in this movie, but also in society, how we look at characters like this, how we celebrate, glorify, obsess over murderers, serial killers, and how it's handled, and using certain things as a way to push a message, to push an agenda. So I get what he was going for, and it's almost like, oh, you guys like the Joker? You're a fan of Arthur Fleck? You're rooting for Arthur Fleck? You're sympathizing with him? Well, here's the second one. I'm going to throw this in your face and tell you what you think you know isn't what you think you know and all that. And I just feel like the first half was just an expose of him just letting us know what he thinks of how people think of the character, the Joker that he created, and what his film meant and how things were deconstructed. It was just... it felt preachy to me. I don't know, man. I mean, not preachy in the sense of like hitting you over the head of like consistently bashing you with the message, but it just felt like it was redundant, man. the first half, we open the film with the animation. We find out it's been 2 years since the events of the first film, and he's pretty much a shell of himself, right? Arthur is just a shell of himself. They're like, tell me a joke, Arthur, and he's taking the pills, and he's fed up with life, right, as we know, and he's just kind of left the Joker. I think the Joker's pretty much bottled inside until he meets a certain character who we'll talk about. But within those 45 minutes, we see him in prison, like I mentioned, and we see that he has his trial coming out. We get the incredible Catherine Keener, who's a phenomenal actress, and she's his lawyer. And this is where the film loses me in a sense. Very early on. So we establish that they are trying to set the defense of his trial is that he suffers from a split personality. There's Arthur Fleck and there's the Joker. She has the camera, we have the scene. And again, I'm going to be all over the place, but stick with me. I thought the film thought it was so much smarter and so much bigger and so much more to say than what it actually was. Like when we're in the room where he's talking to he has his lawyer there, and I can't remember who the one actress, who she was supposed to be, a therapist maybe, but it's like they're like trying to poke the bear. It's like, it reminded me of like a horror movie where you have someone that's possessed and they're like, can I talk to the devil? Can I talk to Damien? Can you bring him out? It felt like that, but the film just kind of, it thought it was boiling. It thought it was cooking, but it wasn't. It was just leftover spaghetti that should have been thrown away. But anyway, we see that that's what their baseline is. They're trying to establish that he has a split personality, that his childhood trauma was the reasoning behind his actions of the first film. So I immediately said to myself, okay, let's see where we're going, Todd. Like, I know a big criticism for the first film for a lot of people was what he said didn't have like an endpoint. It was just like thrown out there without explanation of trying to convey what mental health looks like in the form of Arthur Fleck and how his childhood trauma reflects who he is as a man and how he looks at society and how he feels. Obviously, you got the Gotham and the corruption of Gotham and how it kind of beat him up to become the Joker. And I get all that and whatnot. And I get how some people feel like it was kind of empty. And I don't feel that way about the first one, but I sure do feel that way with this one. But anyway, I'm like, okay, what are we doing, Todd? How are we going to handle this subject matter? How are we going to show how this character is facing the consequences of his actions, which is beautifully done in a certain element, in a certain part of this film, which we'll get into my favorite scene in the courtroom a little bit later. But I'm like, all right, I'm going to see where we're going here. But again, I just felt that the first half, and just going back to Catherine's character as the lawyer, and this is, again, going into my criticisms, so many of these ideas, concepts, and characters, specifically the characters, the supporting characters, and she's one of them, she is not a character with actual motives or development or growth, payoff, or anything of that nature. To me, her character and many other characters, the prison guard and, Harvey Dent and Lady Gaga as Lee, aka Harley Quinn, a lot of these characters are just like plot devices and not actual characters with anything to say or anything to offer. Her character, to me, represented the character, or I should say, represent the people that did sympathize with him and did put on labels of like split personalities, trauma, shape this person to do the actions. Like that is what her character is. That's the description of a character, and that's all of her character, because we don't get anything else from her. At a certain point, they throw away that idea, that concept, and they just throw away the character. Like, he literally fires her in the middle of the movie. Like, we're done with you. We've had enough of that plot. Let's move on. And again, that's how I feel about a lot of these characters, the supporting characters in this film besides Arthur. So speaking of Arthur and supporting characters, let's get into Lee. So Lady Gaga gets involved in the story because he's going to the psych ward, having these conversations with the therapist, with his lawyer. He sees her, they make eye contact. We have the prison guard who is like obsessed with him as far as like using him. And this is, again, another analogy or metaphor of a character who is used to say something but not have like an actual arc or payoff. Like, why didn't the prison guard have why didn't him and Arthur have like an actual, anyway. That prison guard and just the idea of the prison guards, to me, was like a form of Todd Phillips using Arthur, and again, going back to him reflecting on the first one, using Arthur as like a form of their entertainment, right? And what that looks like when it doesn't satisfy what you're looking for, right? And we see that a lot of these characters when they don't get what they thought they were going to get from Arthur and also the Joker, and how that looks like. It's almost like the idea of like when you meet your heroes, they don't live up to your expectations type idea. He takes him to the ward. They meet. They have a bit of a connection. They go back. They have a cigarette. She tells him his story, and basically her story is, which we find out later is a lie, but she says that she grew up in the same neighborhood. She burnt down her apartment complex. Her father died at a young age, and immediately Arthur's like, mom issues, mental health issues, not satisfied with the world, feel like the world's screwing you over. So he's obviously, this is it. This is the one. This is my person. And with that comes a lot of the musical elements. I think the songs is, Come On and Get Happy, and For Once in My Life, I think was the name of the song. And eventually we see them hit it off. We go back to the psych ward. She sets the piano on fire because, again, she's poking the bear. She's literally poking the bear. Again, Arthur's used as a form of entertainment, like dance monkey. We do be who we want you to be type of scenario. So she literally sets the piano on fire to spark the Joker. Again, her whole purpose, and I said this in my review, and I'm going to say it again here. I think Lady Gaga did the best she could with very minimal, very paper thin material that she was given. Sure, we're going to get like a behind the scenes confirmation from Todd Phillips that there was a lot on the cutting room floor from the lead character, because she's literally a plot device. Like, she literally has no payoff at all. And also I feel like she was kind of pointless at points, but either way, they set the piano on fire. They're dancing, singing in the rain, and all that. And like I say, he's in love. He is head over heels. And to the point of the musical, before we get too lost in this conversation, I said it up top, I love a good musical. And I said this in my non-spoiler review, and I'll say it here again. The film is incredibly well made. It is shot well. It sounds good. It looks good. It is really, really well crafted. And as it pertains to the musical numbers, it is well put together. It sounds good. It looks good. But when it comes to how they use the musical, and I get what it's used for, it's him. It's kind of a baton, but it's elevated to another level. We saw how he used music in the first film, him dancing on the stairs, him dancing in the bathroom. And I get how they use music, how Arthur can't convey certain things. Again, like I said earlier, he's a shell of himself. He doesn't really know how to communicate with people. So the musical elements is his way of communicating. So when we get these musicals, and I lost count, let me know in the comments. I feel like there was maybe 13 to 14 songs, maybe more. And while they sound good, I might like the songs, I just thought that the musical element was some of the worst elements of this movie, because it just drug the film down. And it just felt like every time we would cut to a musical, it was shying away from things that we were heading on in the natural sense of the grounded nature of how the narrative was shaping itself. Like, we would come to a moment where Arthur looking at the TV screen, Harvey then saying that they're going to give him the death penalty, and the other inmates, how do you feel about that, Arthur? And he breaks down into song, but it's like, no, like, how do you feel about this? Can we explore this? Or later on, when we have him confronting Harley Quinn, it's like, no, let's have a actual conversation or dive into this, or have the musical. I know some of the musical numbers did convey into the narrative, like how he felt is how he was saying it in the song, but I feel like a lot of times when we would cut to those musicals, it took away, it was a scapegoat to actually go head on talking about that subject matter. I feel like the musical was just used as like a bait and switch almost, man. It felt like the musical just took away from the depth and the complexities and the intricacies of what we were trying to explore in this film. And not only did I feel like it was a distraction and took me away from the scene and took me out of the movie, but I also feel like the actual musical numbers were way too damn long. They played the whole song. Every single musical number was the full 3, 4, 5 minute song, and it was a bummer for me, man. Again, it's nothing against the music or the actual songs. It was just like, it took me out of the movie. So I'm already taken out of the scene, and now you're just laying it on me, and no, pause on that. But you just keep going on and on. I'm just like, this is just not working for me. And another thing I'll mention with the musical before we get into like the second half, which actually is the best part of this film, the thing about the musical that didn't work is, and what I like about a good musical, the buildup, right? When you're in a movie and you know it's a musical and you see our characters down and out or super excited or depressed or whatever the mood they're going for, it's a build up to that moment. It's a level of excitement of like, okay, we're about to break out in song and dance because it's so integral to what this character is going through. How they use the musical in this film, there is no build up. There were literally times where I just dreaded. I just knew like, oh, here it is coming. It's coming because the film doesn't know what to say. So we're going to break out in song and dance. And here it is. And I just got to sit there and watch it. Man, again, it might be a difference of opinion. Some of you all who's watching this might have loved the musical numbers. And again, I'm not saying that the musical numbers were done badly. They were sounded bad. They looked bad. Lady Gaga sounded fire. You know, Joaquin Phoenix walked the line. We know he's not like a world-renowned singer, but he did a good job in the singing scenes. But I thought the musical element, just to get that out of the way now, was probably the worst part of this film for me. So getting back into the story, and I mentioned how now, Arthur is head over heels. He gets thrown into the hole for 2 weeks after the incident of what happened at the psych ward. And I'm pretty sure this happened in reality, she somehow makes her way into his cell. And I would assume, because as we find out, she is Dr. Harley Quinn. She has her ways into the system. Also, we find out she's rich. She might have paid a guard off to let her go visit him. But either way, she visits Arthur. She tells him, this is the plan. We're going to build a mountain together, live a life together. We're going to figure it out or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, buying into her BS or whatever. They have sex. They essentially, like I said, he's head over heels at this point for Lee's character. So now we're in the second half of this movie, and we have another interview, which I did find it funny that I can't remember the character's name, but the interviewer is just like, last time he was interviewed, he shot and killed the interviewer, which was Murray, played by Robert De Niro. We have the interviewer, poking the bear. Again, Arthur's a form of entertainment for anyone that interacts with him in this film. So at this point, again, he's kind of like, he's kind of torn. He's kind of Arthur / Joker with Harley, but then Arthur with his lawyer and I think he genuinely thought that he was going to make it out of prison and live a life at one point in the film. So he's having an interview and the guy's poking him. He's still trying to be like on his lawyer's side, like, I'm not who I'm saying you are. I blacked out. I'm really not the Joker. I was confused, yada, yada, yada. But then he pokes the bear, he brings up Lee, and then he breaks out and dances again. At that point, he's drifting more into the whole Joker persona. So now we're at the point where the trial's all geared up and everyone's riled up, and we now get more and more and more of Harvey Dent. I said this in my spoiler-free review, and I'm going to bring it up here. My goodness, the actor, the decisions that was made by the actor, the direction that was given to him. Whew, he was in another movie. He was in a CW courtroom drama, and I wasn't here for it. But speaking of the courtroom drama, we have everything building up. I thought a lot of the courtroom scenes were very dry, very generic. Wasn't thrilling or exhilarating. It wasn't any drama going on in the courtroom until we get this scene. My favorite scene in the film. We have the character from the first film who survived Arthur's massacre, Buckets, who comes out, and it's a excellent scene. Like, if this film would have just played on elements of this scene, it would have been up there with the first one for me. But the Buckets comes out. He's nervous. Some of the audience is kind of laughing, both in the theater but also in the movie, because it's obviously supporters of the Joker. He comes in, he sits down, and I just thought the scene was so well done. It had comedy, it had drama, it had intrigue, and it was just, honestly, I think it's an excellent scene. And the reason I say this is because it has all the emotions from the first one, and it actually puts Arthur head on and literally facing the actions of its consequences. Like, if the film would have that's why I said I wish they could have found a way to brought Murray in, and you don't have to have these ghostly figures and him confronting ghosts, but I just felt like the film didn't do a good enough job of really having him face what he did in the first film, because it was, it was weighing heavy on him and all that stuff, but it just wasn't conveyed that way until we got the scene when he's in. First off, again, the comedy beats of the Southern accent. He's like a Perry Mason in the scene, and he's like hamming it up. He's almost doing like what Harvey Dent was doing, but much better at what Harvey Dent was doing as far as like being a big shot lawyer or what have you. But I thought that the comedic beats of him making fun of his name, making fun of like when the judge was like, don't make my courtroom into a comedy show. And he's like, you already did that with having, talking about Bucket Tight and all that stuff. But I thought the comedic beat worked, but then the switch, when he's just like, he's Joker's using this as a stage, like the world is his stage, and he's hamming it up. He got the camera, he got the crowd, he's working the crowd. It's going good for him, and the Joker's winning. But then Arthur's brought back up. It's a moment there when Buckets comes back at him and said, I thought that we were friends. You never made fun of me, and you didn't hurt me. He's like, but I didn't kill you. I told you can leave, and he's like, but you didn't kill me then, but you metaphorically killed me. I'm never gonna be the same. And that scene just hit, man. And even like I said, Arthur started to come out, and he was like reflecting on those actions. And like I said, that is there's so many reasons why the scene's so great, but that to me is like what I wish the film would have just focused more on, is really like going head on with Arthur and his actions and facing those head on. But unfortunately, it doesn't really go back into those elements of the film. At this point, he fires his lawyer, and his lawyer tells him that Lee is a fake. She's a fraud. She has money. She comes from money. She's a therapist. She committed herself into therapy, and he's, he has his mind, his fantasy where it's like they have their own sitcom, not sitcom, but they have like their own live show. And they have their back and forth. She points the gun at him because it's like in his mind, it's her portrayal metaphorically. But then in reality, she comes to visit him. He, approaches her with it. And she's like, yeah, I just wanted you to like me. And he's just like, he's so head over heels. And then plus the drop of the dime is when she says she's pregnant, which I don't think she was pregnant. I think she's literally, again, I just wish they could have did so much with Harley. They could have did so much with Harley because she's conniving, she's deceptive, she's a backstabber, but she loves the Joker. There could have been so much they could have did with that character, but she says she's pregnant, so that reels him back in. And like, oh, the lies, who cares? But now he's fully locked in. He's fully in development of the Joker. The whole idea of how she was in the back of the courtroom, but now at this point in the film, again, he's wearing the makeup. He's fully leaning to the Joker. He's making everyone happy. He's going crazy. He's going wild, but then the world sits him down. We have the scene. We're now kind of in the back half of the second act and getting to the third act. The guards of the film attack him. They assault him, which I can't say this on YouTube, but I'm pretty confident that they assault him in a way that is very disturbing and breaks him, right? Because it takes him back to the times when he was a child. And I will say, I will go back on my word. Another scene that I thought was effective in the courtroom was bringing back Zazie Beetz' character, Sophie, I think is her name. She's back in the movie to confirm that, it was, and we knew this from the first one, but just in case you didn't, that their relationship was all made up in his head, but she was a real person. And she talks about her big mistake was that she should have called the police. Again, she's kind of representing that side of the Joker fans of like the Joker is a fearful character. The subject matter can be enticing to those that might feel that they can relate to Arthur and how it can be triggering and whatnot. So that's kind of what her character represented. And I thought it was really effective because this is, again, the breaking point for Arthur, because at this is before he went right into the Joker mode, and this is when he kind of snapped and fired his lawyer. But kind of backtracking to that scene, because like I said, it was one of the more effective scenes in the courtroom. But when she says the nickname that his mom gave her was all made up, and it was to set him up on this path to kind of living his life and thinking he's a happy kid, yada, 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 deceiving him and all that stuff, that was a really effective scene. So again, the courtroom scenes for the most part to me were very generic, except for the Zazie Beetz and having Buckets come back. Those scenes were pretty well executed. So again, this wasn't meant to be a scene for scene breakdown, all that stuff, but just kind of giving you all my thoughts and my emotions, how I felt about the execution and certain things of that nature. So let's gear our way up to the end of this film. So at this point, he's fully on the Joker. They assault him, so now he's broken. He's getting back to Arthur because this is how Arthur felt. It's like he could be big and bombastic, but he's getting bullied and he's being brought back to reality. So now he's broken, and he tells everyone in the courtroom, Harley's there, the world's watching, and he says he's not the Joker. He's never been the Joker. The Joker's never existed, and that breaks the facade, right? And it kind of breaks, again, the film breaking into the meta nature of, going out to the real world, like, stop fantasizing about the Joker. Stop, looking at him as a hero and all that stuff. That's what the film does. It kind of blows the balloon up, right? Metaphorically speaking. So Now he's broken. And I don't want to leave this part out. I'm going to bring it up now because it ties to the third act. But throughout the film, there's two prison inmates that Arthur, one he interacts with more than the other, but the one gentleman is like a friend figure. Again, there's just so many elements of this film that could have been great. The prison stuff could have really been like one Blue Over Cuckoo's Nest type of a situation going on. But the one kid is kind of looking up to Arthur, and he, they kiss at one point, nothing sexual, but it was just like, that's when Arthur was broken, again, used for entertainment purposes. He ends up dying the night that Arthur's assaulted. But then there's another character who we'll talk about at the end, who's just in the background. He's like admiring Arthur. He's watching Arthur, and we'll get to him in a second. But as we get into the third act, wrapping up the film, Harley Quinn, Lee, is broken. He's having his final moments, his final statement to say why, he should be, not given the death penalty or what have you. But he looks at the jury, they tell him the verdict, he's guilty, and he's laughing because we know that that's a instinctual type of reaction. When he's nervous, he laughs. But the parents and the people who were victims, they take that as an insult. So we see one of the fathers, he said, "Oh, you son of a," he attacks Arthur. Commotion's going on in the courtroom, and out of nowhere, boom, we have a bomb go off. And it's coming from the outside. We find out from the radio that it was a bomb planted into a car. Let's address this now. Harley did that, right? Because I think of the piano. She set that off to get a reaction on the Joker, and then she set the bomb off to get a reaction on the Joker, and blew up his world. So, and I got to point again, I hated Harvey Dent. I hated everything they did with Harvey Dent. It was terrible. We see the camera panning, the destruction in the courtroom, and we go over to Harvey Dent. We see Harvey, and we see Harvey there, and it's not like completely gone, his face, but you can see the damage on his face, alluding to who he becomes in the comics, Two-Face. Again, I hated everything they did with Harvey and in the portrayal of Harvey, but Arthur, and I did like, again, everything I said about this film as far as production was immaculate. The sound design of when he's like rattled, he probably just had a concussion. He's coming out of the courtroom. He's still kind of in and out of consciousness, but then he comes across a Joker. And again, it goes back to the idea of like a literal, fanatic seeing the Joker, idolizing the Joker. They put him in a car. He's starting to get his senses back, and they're like, "Man, this world is about to blow up. You've done it, Arthur. You really set off the bomb, literally." And he jumps out of the car. They're chasing him. He eventually makes his way to the staircase, the famous staircase, where he lived and was so famous from the first one. But now this is where things come into question. Was it real? Was it fake? Was Arthur caught in the streets when he was running away from the police? Or does what happens after the staircase, was that reality? So let's talk about the scene. He walks in the staircase. He sees Lee, whose hair is cut off. Prior to that, before the explosion in the courthouse, she had a gun up to her head, alluding to her ending her life because who she thought the Joker was, he wasn't. It was Arthur the whole time. She was upset by it. So the question at hand is, in the scene, she tells him, "You're not who I thought you were. We're ending things. I'm not a fan of who you really are, which is Arthur. You said it yourself, the Joker doesn't exist. So what's the point of life?" She starts singing, right? And the reason the question comes up if it was real or not is because every time a character would sing, 9 times out of 10, there's one time when he sings on the phone, leaving the voicemail. And there's a couple other examples where he's singing and it's in the reality of the situation. But it's not as grandioso. Like you'll notice that when Arthur's having a singing moment, it's grounded in reality to a sense. It is in his head, like the time when he's looking at the TV, that didn't really happen. It was just in his head. But there were a few times where Arthur would sing, but it was a musical number. But when the Joker sang, it was big and bombastic. It had all the lights, camera, action type of moments. But in this moment, it's Harley singing to him. And we really haven't seen a Lee moment in the film, and when she's singing, it's meant to be in reality. So in my mind, I don't think Lee took her life. I think that was Lee on the staircase. I could be wrong. Again, this is where we have the conversation in the comments. But she breaks things off, goes away, and he gets arrested from there. So again, I am to believe that since it was from her perspective, and we really never got a scene when she was singing and it wasn't real. So I'm thinking that was real. Let me know how you feel. But that's not the big thing of the third act. I mean, it is kind of frustrating because I thought that the lead character is just like, really? That's the conclusion of your arc? Like, you're not who you say you are, so now I'm ending things. It was, again, Lady Gaga, no fault of hers. I just thought it's somewhere out there. Like, there's a better portrayal of the character from her within this film, but it's somewhere on the cutting room floor. But anyway, the last moments of this movie. Arthur's caught, which, by the way, it was just like, why is he now back in prison after being, on trial and found guilty and was going to get the death trial, but now he's just sitting here after like, why is he just now willy-nilly just sitting around here? Anyway, he's watching TV. His favorite guard, security or prison guard, tells him, "Oh, Arthur, you got the visitor," and he's thinking that it's Lee. So he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm about to go see Lee," and then I don't know the character's name because they don't give him a name. But it's, as I mentioned earlier, there was 2 inmates that that they made obvious was going to play a part in this film. The one inmate who was nicer to Arthur and looked up to him died. And there was another inmate who follows Arthur, who's walking to the room to go see his visitor, which is death, essentially, and meet his end. But the guy follows him. He says, "Hey, Arthur, let me tell you a joke." And pretty much the joke is like, a guy goes into a bar and comes across a clown that he admired or something, and then the whole punchline was like he wasn't who he says he was or whatever the case may be. I can't think of the actual, I'm butchering the line, apologies. But essentially the idea of the comment of the joke was, you were a letdown. And he stabs Arthur.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's no punchline.
Now, as he stabs Arthur, boom, 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 stabs him. Arthur goes back into his head, into the fantasy, and the Joker, it's like the Joker's killing Arthur, right? The Joker ultimately won, is how I took it. We pan out. He's now on the ground dying, but in the foreground, it's kind of blurry. Let's just call it the Joker. Let's just say the Joker, the real Joker, has a knife, and he's, you want to know how I got these scars on my face? He's literally cutting, his mouth open to put a permanent smile on as the Joker dies, and the film plays the Lady Gaga cover. And that's how we end the film. So, but apparently there was a Q&A with Todd Phillips. Again, take this with a grain of salt. Again, unless I see this on video or like Variety reports this, then take this with a grain of salt. But I saw somewhere online that there was a Q&A held by Todd Phillips after the film. And apparently that guy was the Joker, the real Joker in the world that he created. And that apparently it was said that Arthur was inspired by that real Joker, that he took those bodies. He claimed like Arthur didn't kill anyone. The real literal person who was in prison, the Joker, killed them. He took on the persona. He took credit for those kills. And that guy got his payback and no, I'm the real Joker, and kills Arthur. Take that regret. I hate that if that is true. I don't think it's true, but I just want to mention it. I do think in the reality of the situation, Arthur in the Todd Phillips world, Joker, is a mantle, persona, a mantra of a sense that particular guy took on. Like, you're not the Joker who I thought you were. I'm now going to take on the Joker and show the world what the real Joker could be and should be. And again, it's a whole metaphor of, again, the movie. That's just how Todd Phillips viewed the actual movie, and like, oh, you guys want your Joker? Here's your Joker. I hated it. I freaking hated it. And then apparently, again, take this with a grain of salt, but apparently it was said again that this is maybe potentially the origins of the GOAT, Heath Ledger. But again, I'm not going to even entertain that. But I just thought I would bring that up because, again, I saw that online. I thought it was an interesting conversation. So, yeah, that's the end of the film, y'all. Again, I thought the movie had so much potential to be about a film of showing a character facing the consequences head on of what they did from the first film, and to really explore this character and to really dive into this relationship with Harley Quinn and really go into the deception, the lies, and this kind of this shared delusion of the title that was never coming to fruition. And it just was a letdown, man, because I really do think that the first film is a great, well-made homage to, Taxi Drivers and King of Comedy, and putting his own spin to that world, and really dealing with a character with mental health issues, but then slapping the IP. I've always felt like, and this before we wrap this up, I always feel like without the Joker IP, this film probably would not be anywhere. Well, not probably. It would not have been as successful, like not nearly as successful, if it didn't have the Joker title on the movie. So it needed the Joker to be made. And unfortunately, with the Joker being stamped on there, it's not a Joker movie. It's an Arthur Fleck, type of, and I don't want to make this to a whole conversation. But anyway, wrapping this up, man. I'm not a fan of the film, even though I think it's well made. I think there's good performances, but I think it's a lot of wasted potential. And I really feel like Todd Phillips, the whole idea of like combating the audience of like, oh, you think this is what the Joker is? Well, no, this is what happens when you idolize these type of characters. This is what happens when, he's redefining what certain things meant in the first one and what was real and what was not. It was just like, dude, you're literally making the first one. You're just ruining the first one. But anyway, yeah. A good, beautiful looking piece of art, but without a lot of substance or meaning or value, and just wasted potential. That's going to be the end of this discussion, man. Thank you all for indulging me. If you're still here watching this video, I really appreciate it. If you want me to do more, hit the like button. Share this video. Share your thoughts in the comments, more importantly, man, because this is what this channel is all about, is open discussions, respectful discussions, whether you agree or disagree. That's what this channel is all about. But as my voice is kind of going away, because I'm recording this after I shot my review and I've did some other videos, so your boy has been making the content, and I'm happy to do so. But anyway, man, thank you all for watching this video. Like, share, comment. Consider subscribing to the channel. I don't want to force it on you, but definitely consider subscribing to the channel. And also, I'm experimenting with something for those that want to support me and hopefully make this more of a full-time opportunity for me, because it's something I definitely want to do full-time. But I have a membership. I have memberships on the channel. And right now, the only tier that's available on the channel is $2.99, just for support on the channel. And then if it pops off, does well, I want to add more to the channel for like exclusive content, watch-alongs, discussion pieces like this, and so on and so forth. So if you feel like you can support the channel, if you want to support the channel in that way, then definitely consider becoming, number one, subscribing, which is free, but also taking that extra level and becoming a member on the channel. It would mean a lot to me. But we're going to wrap up. Thank you all for making this point in this review. Like, share, talk about spoilers, everything in the comments below. And thank you all again, and I'll catch you all on the next video.